Welcome to CVR English. This is Naresh Kumar. Let's watch the world news. During his visit to the Alaska, Russian President Vladimir Putin paid tribute to the Soviet World War II pilots by laying flowers at their graves in a local ceremony. The symbolic gesture came after Putin's talks with US President Donald Trump, underscoring a moment of historical remembrance. The pilots who are buried in Alaska were part of a Soviet mission during the war, and their graves remain a significant link between Russia and the US from that era. Putin's visit highlighted a rare acknowledgement of shared wartime history, and his respectful tribute was met with the attention as tensions between the two countries continued to rise.
Good afternoon, Vladika.
Он мне сам рассказал о том, как здесь зарождалось.
And it's been in my prayer corner for 4 years.
И хочу пожелать вам всего самого доброго.
And I would like to wish you all the best. Good afternoon, Vladika.
Он мне сам рассказал о том, как здесь зарождалось.
In a dramatic move, Russian President Vladimir Putin has extended an invitation to US President Donald Trump to visit Moscow, signaling a shift in diplomatic dynamics. The invitation, which comes amid escalating tension between Russia and Ukraine, suggests that Putin aims to engage in discussions with Trump directly. The invitation notably excludes Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, indicating that Russia is determined to bypass him in negotiations. The move is seen as a bold attempt to influence global politics and shape future peace talks, with many questioning the implications for Ukraine's role in the ongoing conflict. The situation remains fluid as world leaders await Trump's response.
All of the things that we'd like to have dealt with, but we'll have a good chance when this is over. So just to put it very quickly, I'm going to start making a few phone calls and tell them what happened. But we had an extremely productive meeting and many points were agreed to. There are just a very few that are left. Some are not that significant. One is probably the most significant. But we have a very good chance of getting there. We didn't get there, but we have a very good chance of getting there. I would like to thank President Putin and his entire team, who I know in many cases, other than that, whose faces I get to see all the time in the newspapers. You're almost as famous as the boss, but especially this one right over here. But we had some good meetings over the years, right? Good, productive meetings over the years, and we hope to have that in the future, but let's do the most productive one right now. We're going to stop really 5, 6, 7,000, thousands of people a week from being killed, and President Putin wants to see that as much as I do. So, again, Mr. President, I'd like to thank you very much, and we'll speak to you very soon and probably see you again very soon. Thank you very much, Vladimir.
Next time in Moscow.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know. I'll get a little heat on that one, but I could see it possibly happening. Thank you very much, Vladimir. And thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has issued a stern warning to European nations, urging them not to interfere in the ongoing Ukraine peace negotiations. His remarks come after his summit in Anchorage, Alaska, where he met with the US President Donald Trump. Despite the high-profile meeting, no concrete agreements were reached on resolving the Ukraine conflict. Putin's warning underscores Russia's frustration with what it perceives as European involvement in the war's diplomatic efforts. With tensions rising, the global community remains uncertain about the next steps in the quest for peace.
Как вы хорошо знаете, понимаете, одним из центральных вопросов стала ситуация вокруг Украины. Мы видим стремление администрации США и лично президента Трампа содействовать разрешению украинского конфликта. Его желание вникнуть в суть и понять его истоки. Я не раз говорил, что для России события на Украине связаны с фундаментальными угрозами нашей национальной безопасности. Более того, мы всегда считали и считаем украинский народ, я говорил об этом неоднократно, братским, как это ни странно прозвучит в сегодняшних условиях. У нас одни корни, и все происходящее для нас – это трагедия и тяжелая боль. Поэтому наша страна искренне заинтересована в том, чтобы положить этому конец. Но при этом мы убеждены, что чтобы украинское урегулирование носило устойчивый и долгосрочный характер, должны быть устранены все первопричины кризиса, о которых говорили неоднократно. Обеспечен учет всех законных озабоченностей России, восстановлен справедливый баланс в сфере безопасности в Европе и в мире в целом. Я согласен с президентом Трампом, он сегодня говорил об этом, что, безусловно, должна быть обеспечена и безопасность Украины. Конечно, мы готовы над этим работать. Хочется надеяться, что достигнутое нами понимание позволит приблизиться к той цели и откроет дорогу к миру на Украине. Мы рассчитываем, что в Киеве и европейских столицах воспримут все это в конструктивном ключе и не станут чинить никаких препятствий. Не будут предпринимать попыток за счет провокаций или закулисных интриг сорвать намечающийся прогресс. Я хотел бы поблагодарить господина Трампа за совместную работу, за доброжелательный и доверительный тон беседы. Главное, что с обеих сторон был настрой на результат. Мы видим, что президент США имеет четкое представление о том, чего хочет добиться, искренне заботится о процветании своей страны и в то же время проявляет понимание наличия в России своих национальных интересов. Рассчитывает, что сегодняшние договоренности станут опорной точкой не только для решения.
After his summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin, US President Donald Trump announced that while their discussions on Ukraine had been productive, no formal agreement had been reached. The two leaders held a brief joint news conference, which was notably devoid of any press questions, leaving many crucial details unaddressed. Trump praised the fantastic relationship between him and Putin, claiming significant progress had been made, but offered little insight into what, if any, tangible outcomes had emerged from the talks. The ambiguous nature of the meeting has left many analysts questioning the true direction of US-Russia negotiations on the ongoing Ukraine conflict.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. That was very profound, and I will say that I believe we had a very productive meeting. There were many, many points that we agreed on, most of them, I would say, a couple of big ones that we haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway. So there's no deal until there's a deal. I will call up NATO in a little while. I will call up the various people that I think are appropriate, and I'll, of course, call up President Zelensky and tell him about today's meeting. It's ultimately up to them. They're going to have to agree with what Marco and Steve and some of the great people from the Trump administration who've come here, Scott, and we really made some great progress today. I've always had a fantastic relationship with President Putin, with Vladimir. We had many tough meetings, good meetings. We were interfered with by the Russia hoax. It made it a little bit tougher to deal with, but he understood it. I think he's probably seen things like that during the course of his career. He's seen it all. but we had to put up with the Russia hoax. He knew it was a hoax, and I knew it was a hoax, but what was done was very criminal. But it made it harder for us to deal as a country in terms of the business and all of the things that we'd like to have dealt with. But we'll have a good chance when this is over. So just to put it very quickly, I'm going to start making a few phone calls and tell them what happened. But we had an extremely productive meeting, and many points were agreed to. There are just a very few that are left. Some are not that significant. One is probably the most significant, but we have a very good chance of getting there. We didn't get there, but we have a very good chance of getting there. I would like to thank President Putin and his entire team, who I know in many cases, other than that, whose faces I get to see all the time in the newspapers. You're almost as famous as the boss, but especially this one right over here. But we had some good meetings over the years, right? Good, productive meetings over the years, and we hope to have that in the future. But let's do the most productive one right now. We're going to stop really 5, 6, 7,000, thousands of people a week from being killed, and President Putin wants to see that as much as I do. So, again, Mr. President, I'd like to thank you very much. And
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke out condemning Russia's ongoing attacks as tensions rise ahead of the summit between US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Zelensky stated that despite Russia's relentless military offensive, including a new assault in eastern Ukraine, Moscow's attempt to showcase strength had faltered. The renewed attacks come as the world focuses on the high-stakes meeting, with many questioning how the talks will impact Ukraine's future. Zelensky's comments underscore Ukraine's resolve despite Russia's continued aggression.
Ми отримуємо також доповіді з регіонів України після російських ударів. Суми, російський удар по центральному ринку, Дніпровщина, удари по містах та підприємствах, Запоріжжя, Херсонщина, Донеччина – свідомі російські удари. Війна триває саме через те, що немає не тільки наказу, але й сигналів про підготовку Москви завершувати цю війну. В день перемовин вони теж вбивають, і це багато говорить. Сподіваємось на сильну позицію Америки. Все буде від цього залежати. Росіяни зважають на американську силу. Саме на силу. Зустріч лідерів потрібна, щонайменше Україна, Америка, російська сторона. Саме в такому форматі можливі ефективні рішення. Гарантії безпеки потрібні, тривалий мир дуже потрібен. Всі знають ключові цілі. Російський намір був показати силу перед Аляскою. Фактично для окупанта це
US President Donald Trump stated that they would not negotiate on behalf of Ukraine during a summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Trump emphasized that the decision on whether to engage in territorial swaps with Russia would be left to Ukraine's leadership. This came ahead of their high-stakes meeting in Alaska, which aimed at discussing a potential ceasefire deal to end the devastating war in Ukraine. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky, who was excluded from the talks, along with European allies, had expressed concerns that Trump might inadvertently freeze and conflict by recognizing Russian control over Ukrainian territory. With the summit now concluded, global attention remains focused on how the discussions might affect the war's future trajectory and Ukraine's territorial integrity.
look, he's a smart guy, been doing it for a long time, but so have I. Been doing it for a long time. And here we are with President. That was much more difficult than what I'm doing today, believe me. So we get along. There's a good respect level on both sides. And I think, something's going to come of it. I noticed he's bringing a lot of business people from Russia. And that's good. I like that because they want to do business, but they're not doing business until we get the war settled. I think they're trying to negotiate. He's trying to set a stage. I mean, in his mind, that helps him make a better deal. It actually hurts him. But in his mind, that helps him make a better deal if they can continue the killing. Maybe it's a part of the world. Maybe it's just his fabric, his genes, his genetics. But he thinks that makes him gives him strength in negotiating. I think it hurts him, but I'll be talking to him about it later. I'm not here to negotiate for Ukraine. I'm here to get him at a table, and I think you have two sides. Look, Vladimir Putin wanted to take all of Ukraine. If I wasn't president, he would right now be taking all of Ukraine. But he's not going to do it.
Mr. President, what...
If we make progress, I would discuss it, because that's one of the things that they would like. They'd like to get a piece of what I built in terms of the economy. Just so you know, we were a dead country with our economy. He wouldn't be interested. He wouldn't have been interested a year ago with the Biden economy. But he is interested in the Trump economy, because we're doing... Wait till you see when those factories start opening up. We have hundreds of factories all over the country. I'm not doing this for my health, okay? I don't need it. I'd like to focus on our country, but...
New Orleans Mayor LaToya Cantrell has been indicated and charges related to the years-long effort to conceal a romantic relationship with her bodyguard. Prosecutors allege that Cantrell arranged for the bodyguard to be paid for work while they privately met in apartments and traveled together to the ads for wine tasting. The indictment accuses her of misusing public funds to cover up the affair, raising serious concerns about ethical violations in her administration. The bodyguard reportedly received compensation for activities that were not part of his official duties. Cantrell has not yet issued a public statement, and her legal team has yet to address the charges. The case has sparked public outrage, demanding accountability and transparency in the city leadership.
Earlier today, a federal grand jury returned an 18-count superseding indictment charging New Orleans Mayor LaToya Cantrell and former New Orleans Police Department officer Jeffrey Paul Vappy II. They are charged with a series of fraud, obstruction of justice, and false statement offenses for their role in a nearly 3-year fraud scheme that we allege exploited their public authority and positions. Mayor Cantrell and Jeffrey Vappy, a member of her executive protection team, developed a personal, intimate relationship. They embarked on a scheme to defraud the city of New Orleans and the New Orleans Police Department. By exploiting Vappy's job and Cantrell's authority as mayor to have the city and the New Orleans Police Department pay Vappy's salary and expenses during the times that Vappy claimed to be on duty, but when he was actually engaged in personal activities, usually with Ms.
Japan marked the 18th anniversary of World War II, and with the pageant speeches from the Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba and Emperor Naruhito during his solemn memorial ceremony. Both leaders highlighted the importance of preserving peace and honoring the sacrifices made during the war. Ishiba urged Japan to never repeat the horrors of war and reaffirmed the country's commitment to the right path. Emperor Naruhito echoed these sentiments, emphasizing the need to pass on the stories of wartime hardships and continue striving for peace and happiness for all people. The ceremony served as a powerful reminder of Japan's resolve to ensure that the lessons of the past are never forgotten.
終戦以来80年、人々のたゆみない努力により、今日の我が国の平和と繁栄が築き上げられましたが、多くの苦難に満ちた国民の歩みを思うとき、誠に感慨深いものがあります。
先の大戦から80年が経ちました。今では戦争を知らない世代が大多数となりました。戦争の惨禍を決して繰り返さない、進む道を二度と間違えない、あの戦争の反省と教訓を 今改めて深く胸に刻まねばなりません。この80年間、我が国は一貫して平和国家として歩み、
Commenting on the recent Trump-Putin summit in Alaska, University of North Carolina professor Klaus Laris described the encounter as pretty shocking. He noted that President Donald Trump welcomed Russian President Vladimir Putin like an war friend he had not seen for many years, adding he really greeted him not as an opponent or someone you have to be careful and suspicious about, but really almost like a family member. Laris emphasized that such warmth between leaders, especially amid ongoing tensions over the Ukraine, was unexpected and raised concerns about the tone and implications of the meeting.
Well, I think the whole scenario was pretty shocking. It started with the welcoming ceremony, and where Trump welcomed Putin like an old friend he had he had not seen for many years, which is of course true. They met last in 2019, so they have had various phone conversations in the meantime. But he really greeted him not as an opponent or as someone you have to be careful and suspicious about, but really like almost like a family member. And that, I think, was a little shocking. Then he gave him a ride in his presidential limousine. That was polite, you can say, but we don't know what they spoke in that limousine because there was no interpreter inside that limousine. Putin does speak English, perhaps not very well, but he does speak English. And they must have talked about something. Perhaps it was just small talk, but perhaps they also already talked about the strategies they were about to pursue in that meeting they were shortly convening. So, and from there it went, it didn't get much better. Then they had the meetings, which we were not party of. We didn't know, of course, what happened behind closed doors. But then the press conference, again, they seem to get on very well. Trump referred to Putin as Vladimir, and he also said that there was no Russia hoax, and Putin understood him. But all the rest, particularly of the American elite, did not understand that. He could only rely on Putin to see his point of view. And this is all, a continuation of the relationship with Putin as it was during his first term. Perhaps even more intensive.
Anti-government protesters clashed with riot police in dramatic night of unrest. Chaotic scenes unfolded with the burning barricades, tear gas exchanges, and fireworks lighting up the smoke-filled streets as demonstrators, many waving Serbian flags, confronted armored vehicles and riot units. President Alexander Vučić defended the police response, stating that several officers had been injured in the clashes. Despite this, protesters continued to demand accountability and sweeping reforms, highlighting the growing discontent with the government's policies. The violence marks a significant escalation in Serbia's ongoing political turmoil.
koji su komandiri pravi, a koji nisu.
As President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin held the high-stakes summit in Alaska, local Alaskans gathered in a protest, unfurling a massive Ukrainian flag to show solidarity with Ukraine. The protesters called for peace, sovereignty and justice, expressing anger over Russia's ongoing war. Many of the attendees had personal ties to the Ukraine, which added a deeply emotional element to the demonstration. The moment was described as very moving by those present, with one protester stated, "We stand for freedom," emphasizing the collective call for an end to Russia's aggression.
Well, we followed the situation in Ukraine since it started, and it's very close to our heart. The slaughter that's gone on for the Ukrainians and even the Russians has been a horrible thing. And it's something that they were attacked. They did not want the war, and it's something that we can't live with as Americans, at least this American anyway. So we support the Ukrainians, we empathize with their suffering, and we hope the little bit that we can do might make some difference somewhere. So that's it.
I saw your
Nice. We were down back there.
Well, to be absolutely honest, we came just a tad late, but when we got to the flag, I had a few tears come out. It was very moving for us to see all the people and the commitment that people have to support Ukraine. So, very moving.
Yeah, a bit. I like Dick. I like Kate. Not good.
Rescue workers in northern Pakistan are using heavy machinery to sift through the debris and mud after devastating monsoon rains. Triggered landslides, the flash floods, the disaster which struck in the past 24 hours has claimed dozens of lives and left many more injured. As the region grapples with a widespread destruction, emergency teams are working around the clock to research the survivors and provide aid to the affected areas. The heavy rainfall has excavated the already fragile infrastructure, making rescue efforts challenging. That's the wrap about the world news. Keep watching CVR English News.